The Chernobyl disaster, a catastrophe of unparalleled scale. The Chernobyl disaster, which occurred on April 26, 1986, at the Chernobyl Nuclear Power Plant near the town of Pripyat in the then-Soviet Ukraine, is one of the most catastrophic nuclear accidents in human history. The explosion and subsequent fallout not only caused immediate devastation, but also had far-reaching environmental, political, and societal consequences. This video delves into the causes, events, and aftermath of the disaster, exploring its impact on the global stage and the lessons learned. The Chernobyl Nuclear Power Plant, officially known as the V.I. Lenin Nuclear Power Station, was one of the largest and most advanced nuclear facilities of its time. The plant consisted of 4 RBMK-1000 reactors, a Soviet-designed series of graphite-moderated nuclear reactors. These reactors, while efficient and cost-effective, had significant design flaws, including an inherent instability at low power levels and the absence of a robust containment structure. The USS Arkwot's ambitious push for rapid industrialization and energy production often led to compromises in safety. Despite warnings from scientists and engineers about the reactor design's vulnerabilities, the government prioritized production targets over caution. This set the stage for the catastrophic events of 1986. Events leading to the explosion. The disaster was triggered during a late-night safety test on Reactor 4. The test aimed to assess the reactor's ability to maintain cooling water circulation during a power outage. Ironically, the test's objective was to enhance safety. During the test, operators committed a series of critical errors, some of which were the result of poor training and others due to a lack of proper communication. Key mistakes included lowering power to an unstable level. The reactor was operated at dangerously low power levels, creating instability. Disabling safety systems. Automatic shutdown mechanisms were disabled to prevent interference with the test. Inserting control rods improperly. The reactor's graphite-tipped control rods, designed to regulate fission reactions, were inserted too rapidly, exacerbating the instability. At 1:23:40 a.m., a sudden surge in power led to an uncontrollable reaction. The reactor core exploded, releasing a massive amount of radioactive materials into the atmosphere. The explosion obliterated the reactor building, exposing the core and initiating a fire that burned for days. Immediate aftermath. The explosion released approximately 400 times more radioactive material than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Radioactive isotopes, such as iodine-131, cesium-137, and strontium-90, spread across large swaths of Europe, carried by atmospheric currents. The Soviet government's initial response was marked by secrecy and denial. Local residents in Pripyat were not evacuated until 36 hours after the explosion, exposing them to dangerously high levels of radiation. By the time evacuation orders were issued, radiation levels in the area had already spiked to lethal levels. Firefighters and plant workers who responded to the disaster faced extreme radiation exposure. Many of these individuals, later termed liquidators, succumbed to acute radiation syndrome (ARS). The lack of protective equipment and knowledge about the situation compounded their suffering. Long-term consequences. Environmental impact. The Chernobyl disaster caused extensive contamination of land, water, and ecosystems. The 30-kilometer exclusion zone around the plant remains one of the most radioactive places on Earth. The Red Forest, located near the reactor, experienced such high radiation levels that its trees turned a reddish-brown color and died. Radiation contaminated agricultural lands, making them unfit for farming. Contaminants entered waterways, affecting fish populations and water quality. The effects of the disaster were not confined to Ukraine. Radioactive fallout spread to Belarus, Russia, and other parts of Europe, affecting millions. Health effects. The health consequences of the Chernobyl disaster were profound and long-lasting. In the years following the explosion, there was a significant increase in thyroid cancer cases, particularly among children exposed to iodine 131. Other health issues included leukemia, cardiovascular diseases, and genetic mutations. Psychological effects were equally devastating. The trauma of displacement, loss of livelihood, and fear of radiation exposure led to widespread mental health issues among affected populations. The stigma associated with being a Chernobyl survivor further compounded these challenges. Economic and social impact. The economic cost of the Chernobyl disaster was astronomical. The Soviet Union allocated billions of rubles to containment, cleanup, and compensation efforts. The disaster disrupted local economies, particularly in agriculture and forestry, and forced the relocation of hundreds of thousands of people. Socially, the disaster eroded trust in the Soviet government. The initial attempts to downplay the severity of the accident and the delayed response revealed systemic flaws in governance. This loss of trust contributed to growing dissent and was a factor in the eventual dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991. Global impact and lessons learned. The Chernobyl disaster prompted a global reevaluation of nuclear safety. Countries worldwide adopted stricter safety protocols, improved reactor designs, and enhanced emergency preparedness. The International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, introduced new regulations to ensure greater transparency and international cooperation. The disaster also spurred advancements in radiation monitoring and environmental remediation technologies. Research into the long-term effects of radiation exposure has provided valuable insights into public health and safety. Despite these lessons, Chernobyl remains a stark reminder of the risks associated with nuclear energy. It underscores the importance of prioritizing safety over productivity, maintaining robust oversight, and fostering a culture of accountability. Conclusion: the Chernobyl disaster was a tragedy of monumental proportions, resulting from a confluence of human error, design flaws, and systemic failures. Its aftermath continues to affect lives and ecosystems, serving as a sobering lesson for humanity. As the world grapples with the challenges of energy production and environmental sustainability, the legacy of Chernobyl reminds us of the need for vigilance, responsibility, and the relentless pursuit of safety.